Sandra, what are the most common challenges to developing the culture a workplace desires?
So one of the key challenges that I see that does stand out as a very common challenge is that there's a lack of understanding of what culture even is. You know, there's a lot of myths out there of what culture is, like it's, hey, let's bring your dog to work day, it's, we got the foosball table. That's a good culture, right? We did all this. We bought the ping pong table. Don't we have a good culture now? So, just really defining, back to Rob's point of, it's a shared set of values. It's how do we behave? And really clarifying the expectations on what that means. So I think first just a general understanding of what culture is, what it's not, and then what do you want your culture to be? It should be very unique. One of the other common challenges that I see in developing a healthy corporate culture is lack of sustained effort. In our fast-paced microwave world, right? It's human nature. We want things to happen fastly. We try something and we don't see an immediate result, so we're like on to the next. So I think you have to really take that long view approach, the sustained approach to build a healthy culture. You can really start and move in a positive direction in a very short time frame, but really great culture change takes an average about 5 years to really get it habitual. And if you think about the average tenure of Fortune 500 CEOs, it's like 6 years, so, and then they're on to the next thing. So those are two of the common challenges that I've really encountered.
I think there's one other thing too, is quite often, you mentioned the ping pong table kind of thing, that it's also tends to be very event driven. Cultures. We think because we had an employee appreciation day and then we had the picnic and we had the holiday party, that if we had those, we have a good culture because we take the snapshots and times of those events, right? As opposed to thinking about culture, about what is our culture every single day? When people drive to work in the morning, how are they feeling about where they're going to work, right? How do they feel when they drive home? So, and I think they need to keep in mind a couple of things. That one of the other barriers that you often face when you're trying to drive culture through an organization, especially if it's a larger organization, is that you've probably tried something like that before. And the mentality of the employee base now is like, well, we've tried this before. It'll go away, right? It's flavor of the month. It's going to go away. I'll just ignore it and it'll go away. So you have to be, to your point, very persistent about this and very deliberate about it. But also, not invite the general employees into the tent too quickly. That's what I see a lot. So the C-suite will go up there, your CFO, your CEO, the COO will go up there and say, this is what our culture is going to be, right? But then if they don't behave that way, there's automatically a disconnect. So I really recommend them try and cascade it throughout the organization, starting in the C-suite, make sure everybody's on board, and we're actually, again, there's this word again, right? Behaving to what those values are of the organization, what we want the culture to be. Get next level management on board and slowly cascade that till you get to the general employee population, because then the effect that you really want from them is that, in fact, oh, I thought something was changing around here. Now I get it, because now you're actually explaining to me and it makes sense because I've already seen it. As opposed to, if it gets to me too early and I don't see it, I don't believe it. And it's got to be not only behaved but believed. So I think it's really good points.
I love those examples, because one of the challenges that I definitely have seen is thinking that any one person owns culture in an organization. So oftentimes we either put it on the CEO's hat, or the CEO says,
or it goes in HR, right? It's got to go in HR, right?
It's either CEO or HR. Those are the two people normally who are tasked with owning culture. But the reality is it will never be successful unless all of the stakeholders, those key stakeholders, own it collectively and together.
I would take it one step farther. If it's not a strategic initiative of the organization, it's doomed to fail, right? And that goes to the point that it doesn't simply reside in HR. It is not only in the C-suite, it has to be ingrained into each of the department heads, each of the functional areas of your business have to buy into that. When they do, again, we know what culture can do. We can probably share a lot of facts and figures here today about that, but culture can take you places you never dreamed of, but you really got to work at it, and you can't just delegate it to somebody else. It will not happen that way. In fact, all you're going to do really is frustrate your employee population, because it'll be a start and stop about things. So,
to add on to that, I would even say when you're really discussing it with the company as a whole, is just helping set the expectation that culture is everyone's responsibility. It's not just every single person that comes into your office every day. They decide to either further your culture or detract from it. You know, they're supporting it or they're working against it, you know, consciously or unconsciously. So I think you create more of an empowerment approach to say, hey, if you want to work in a great environment, we spend a lot of time here. I'm assuming everybody wants to work in a great environment, but you're all part of it by how you show up each day, how you behave, how you treat others.
And even broader than the employee themselves, right? It's the culture itself is either working for you, against you. I'm going to go back to a word you used early on about being intentional. So if you think, well, you know, if it's not intentional, then the odds are that culture is probably working against you. Sure. So even if you don't feel you have a bad culture today, right? How much better could it be? How much better could you execute? How much happier could your employees be? How much more retention would you have, right? If you had a truly intentional, healthy culture.